Council of Economic Advisors and Joint Economic Committee. CEA was established to advise the President on policies to fulfill the goals of the Act, while the GEC investigated a wide range of economic problems of national interest. Next, the expansionary fiscal policy that shifts to the left the aggregate demand or the AD. Simply means it uses increases in government spending or tax cuts to push economy out of recession. Next, the increased government spending that shift to the right the aggregate demand or the AD. Other things equal, increase in government spending, expand and decrease contract, aggregate demand, and equilibrium GDP. Next, the tax reduction. The shift, the aggregate demand rightward. Increase in tax reduce and decrease expand, aggregate demand, and equilibrium GDP. Next, the combined government spending increases and tax reductions. They may combine to produce the desired initial increase in spending and the eventual increase in aggregate demand and real GDP. And next is the contractionary fiscal policy. Contractionary fiscal policy says decrease in government purchases of goods and services, increase in net taxes, or combine of two, for the purpose of decreasing aggregate demand and thus controlling inflation. And the last one is the decreased government spending that shift the aggregate demand leftward. Reduce government spending shift aggregate demand per leftward to control demand, pull inflation, and it is just a counterpart of increased government spending. That's
I'm Emily Billionaire and I am the next reporter. I'm going to report that increased taxes and combined government spending decreases the tax base. The government can use tax cuts to increase consumption spending. It can also use tax increases in order to reduce combined spending. The government may also choose to combine spending decreases and tax increases in order to reduce aggregate demand and check inflation. Next is financing of deficits and disposing of surpluses. The expansionary effect of deficit spending on the economy depends on the method used to finance a deficit. First, these are the two methods. First one is the borrowing from the public, in which the government enter the money market and borrows to compete for funds with private business borrowers. This added demand for funds may drive up the interest rate and crowd out some private investment spending and interest-sensitive consumer spending. The decline in private spending will weaken the expansionary effect, and the deficit spending will also decrease. Next is money creation. In this case, federal spending can increase without adversely impacting investment or consumption, and creation of money is more expansionary than borrowing as a way of financing a deficit. Next is debt reduction. Using the surplus to pay off debt, however, may reduce an anti-inflationary effect of the surplus. The government buys back some of its lands, causing its interest to rate to fall, and thus private borrowing and spending rise. Next is impounding. When a surplus is impounded, the government is exactly withholding a purchasing power from the economy. Impounding a budget surplus is more anti-inflationary than using the surplus to retire public debt. Next is built-in stabilizer, in which is anything that increases the government deficits during a recession and increases its budget to surplus during inflation. Next one is the tax progressivity. First one is the progressive tax system, in which the average tax rates rises as GDP. Next is proportional tax system, in which the average tax remains as the GDP rises. And the third one is regressive tax system, in which the average tax falls as the GDP rises.
I'm Marvin Lang, and I'm going to report about actual versus full employment budget. Actual budget in any particular year does not tell us whether government's currently discretionary fiscal policy is expansionary, neutral, or contractionary. And full employment budget. This budget, also called the standardized budget, measures what the federal budget deficit or surplus would be existing tax and government spending structures if the economy were at full employment throughout the year. The historical comparison compares the deficit and surpluses in the U.S. full employment budget with the deficit and surpluses in the actual budget. These are the graph of actual and full employment deficits and surpluses in the United States. Full employment budget deficits and surpluses offer differ in size from actual budget. Deficits and surpluses changes in full employment budget. Deficits or surpluses are better indicators or whether government's fiscal policy is expansionary, neutral, or contractionary than are changes in actual budget deficits or surpluses. And these are the proposed balanced budget requirements. First is increasing taxes so that the tax line shifts upward to D2 intersecting the G1 line at point A. Sa number 1, kailangan syempre mas sisingilin natin ng mataas na tax yung isang company or isang organization para magkaroon tayo ng budget na pag-uukulan natin ng mga gagastusin sa mga...
Okay na, record ulit.
Number 2, reducing government spending. Siyempre, dito sa number 2, kailangan natin tipirin yung pera ng gobyerno. Hindi yung basta-basta gagastos lang tayo. Kailangan yung nasa tama yung paggastos natin. Tsaka yung mga importanteng bagay lang yung dapat natin pag-ukulan ng pansin na para gastusan. And the third is increasing taxes and reducing spending in some combination to eliminate deficit. Dito kailangan nga i-increase yung taxes. Tapos, bawas-bawasan natin yung gasto sa mga hindi naman importanteng bagay. Yun lang. That's the end of my report.